Oklahoma.
I got a feeling Oklahoma's going to light Kansas up. I think Texas is going to light BYU. I don't think either one of them.
You asked the question.
Yeah.
I would lean Kansas. I think if BYU's in this game, they're going to win the game for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm going to say BYU and Texas is closer, but Oklahoma wins by 38 and Texas wins by 35. Neither one of them are very close.
But BYU, watch this, as a nocturnal team. When they play at night this year, they win. When they play during the day, they don't play well.
Second down.
Let's see if I read my writing here. More likely to win this weekend, to pull the upset. Only 2 ranked games. Number 13 Utah hosting number 8 Oregon, or number 20 Duke at number 18 Louisville. More likely to win. Win the game outright.
I mean, to me,
spreads.
they're both coin flip games. I'm going to go Utah just based on the fact that they're 26-2, their last 28 in Rice Eccles.
Yeah, I would go Utah as well. Tough place to play. Bo Nix has not had that bad game. I'm not like Lance 100% saying it will be tomorrow, but he has not had that bad game, and every quarterback has a bad game at some point.
Can you make the case this is the toughest defense that Bo Nix will face in the regular season this year?
Do they play UCLA?
It's the toughest defense he's seen since Georgia back at Auburn.
Yeah. I mean, you can make that case, yes.
Yeah, I mean, and it's on the road. It's a tough situation.
Third down.
More points scored this weekend. UCLA or USC. UCLA hosting Colorado at the Rose Bowl. USC on the road in Berkeley. Who scores more points, UCLA or USC?
USC's offense is in a little bit of a funk. I think it's UCLA.
Yeah.
Chip Kelly probably has his best defense that he's had at UCLA. And this offense is still a work in progress with a true freshman quarterback. But he seems to have one of these 50-spot games, and it will be this weekend.
And was it confirmed yesterday that Ethan Garbers? I think I saw it was confirmed.
Going to start?
Ethan Garbers is going to start.
I mean, I think UCLA's playing against the worst defense. Cal's defense, I probably overstated it yesterday. They're not been as good of late. But they're a better defense than Colorado. So, and I agree, USC's in a little bit of a funk here. So I'll go UCLA score more points.
Fourth down.
And finally, this weekend, largest margin of victory. Washington versus Stanford, or Penn State versus Indiana? Tough question.
Yeah.
I'll repeat it, in fact, while you think. Washington over Stanford or Penn State over Indiana, largest margin.
I think it's going to be Penn State, Lance, and here's why. I think James Franklin is going to do the old, if I score 50, it'll lessen the blow of last week. And Washington's not necessarily in that situation because they didn't lose.
Pretty amazing. Penn State's held 14 consecutive non-ranked teams to 17 or less points. First time any FBS school's done that since Bama back in 2011 to 2013. So I could see them try to make a statement, but they were so bad last week against Ohio State, and I wonder where they are mentally. On the other side, Washington was bad in a loss. You're trying to get Penix back up there to win a Heisman. I'm going to go Washington.
Yeah, Washington was bad in a win.
In a win, yeah.
In a win, yeah.
Yeah, so now trying to get him back, the feet under him before he gets some more tougher games. Stanford's defense has been horrible lately.
It has.
Since they won that, they pulled the one upset. Who'd they beat?
It was Colorado.
They beat Colorado.
But they were terrible in the first. They were down 29-0 at half.
Yeah, and then they come back and won the game. But since then, they've been beaten like 42-7 by everybody.
Yeah, they're not good. I mean, that Colorado thing is by far and away the outlier.
Yeah, I'm going to go Washington, but close. Penn State will be able to run the ball and beat Indiana.
Yeah.
Both those games will be blowouts. That's 4 downs. Brought to you by our great friends at Slice.
Yeah, local pizza, local ingredients. Get into one of those 4 locations this weekend. Make sure you tell the Bajalia brothers the next round sent you.
All right. And our friends at Moore's getting you ready for the weekend. We'll talk to Todd Furman in Vegas when we come back. Tell us about Moore's Marinade.
Well, you can be the hero this weekend with Moore's Marinade on that grill. Listen, one of the things that I don't like in my marinade is a ton of sodium, that salty taste. You don't have that with Moore's. In fact, lower sodium than the leading lower sodium marinade. And you don't sacrifice any flavor because it's still got that amazing hickory flavor, anything you're putting on the grill. Burgers, chicken, steak, pork, veggies. It all works with Moore's. And don't forget their wing sauces, their buffalo wing sauce, and...
It's time to go Monday morning live with Tom Luganbill. I'm Jim Dunaway. The one thing I hate about coming in on Monday morning when we do the 4 downs as late in the show as we did on Friday is how bad we missed the predictions in our 4 downs on Friday. It was horrible. Horrible predictions from us on Friday. Luganbill, I hear you laughing already. It was one of those weekends where some games were closer than expected and others, we had some upsets, including Kansas taking it to Oklahoma.
You know what, though? I was just listening to that. I'd signed on, and I heard like some of those questions were hard. That Indiana-Penn State question and the Washington-Stanford question,
yes,
that was a hard one. And so was the Oregon Utah. Like, first of all, nobody does that to Utah. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody does that to Utah's defense, home or on the road, but especially at Rice-Eccles. So I felt for you guys on 4 downs on that one. That was tough for anybody who would have participated.
Yeah, really tough. But my favorite part was saying, I think both Texas and Oklahoma have easy wins this weekend. I'm going to say Texas, BYU is closer. Oklahoma probably beats Kansas by 38. It wasn't by 38. Kansas gets the win. And listen, Oklahoma made the playoffs in 17 and in 19 with a loss, so they're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination because they got to win against Texas, and they've got some, big wins coming up if they can still run the table, including possibly a rematch with Texas. But boy, is it a big weekend coming up in the Big 12. Oklahoma State for the 117th time in Bedlam, maybe the last time you're going to that game. Yeah. Kansas State, who's as hot as anyone, playing Texas. Yep. It's a big weekend coming up. Let's start with Oklahoma State. When you get to Stillwater, how do you think the bad blood's going to be between these two longtime rivals? Because, Gundy's done nothing to water this down, and all of a sudden Oklahoma State's playing good football.
Yeah, listen, this is going to be a raucous, rowdy, maybe one of the most difficult environments our crew will experience all year. As you referenced, it's potentially the last Bedlam ever. It is a heated rivalry that goes back over 100 years. Oklahoma State has voiced their displeasure with Oklahoma leaving and going to the SEC. And just think, it wasn't that long ago before South Alabama went up to Stillwater and whooped Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State couldn't find its way up. They didn't have a quarterback. Now, all of a sudden, they settled in on the journeyman, Alan Bowman. And I think, and I'm serious when I say this, and if you're not paying attention, go check it out. They might have a Heisman candidate in running back Ollie Gordon. This is a team that with an offseason that was so tumultuous, there was such negativity surrounding Mike Gundy, this program, the mass exodus in the transfer portal with a lot of players that are starting for other people. They couldn't run it a lick last year. And now all of a sudden they're getting an Oklahoma team whose back's been against the wall, narrowly escaping against UCF, going on the road and getting in a tussle with Kansas in front of a packed crowd, going down to the Jayhawks. Now they got to go on the road and play a red-hot Oklahoma State team. And you referenced Texas. And I was on that sideline this week. I don't know if I feel good about Texas beating Kansas State with Malik Murphy at quarterback. I don't know if that's going to happen the way that Kansas State's playing football right now.
So Kansas gets the win over Oklahoma. First time since 1984 they beat a top 10 team in the AP poll at home, and it was Oklahoma the last time they did this. What went wrong for Oklahoma? I mean, Kansas did some things right, but there were a lot of mistakes by Oklahoma in that game, including Dylan Gabriel, who played at UCF. He's a Hawaiian quarterback, and he didn't seem – I mean, he wasn't that cold, but it was colder and wet and everything. They just never looked comfortable in that contest.
They were heavily penalized. I think 11 penalties for over 100 yards. That crushed them. You're not going to do that on the road because a lot of those penalties extended drives for Kansas. They turned the ball over, especially early. The pick six was something that I think got the crowd involved, switched momentum, and then it was just they kept going tit for tat, toe for toe, back at it with each other. And I think at the end of the day, Oklahoma was not great on third down, and Kansas just made fewer errors. And by and large, and let's keep in mind, Kansas has been doing this now with a backup quarterback since they lost Jalen Daniels in pregame warm-up against Texas. Texas didn't have to play Kansas with Jalen Daniels. So all of a sudden, Jason Bean's thrust into duty, and that helped Texas on that day. And then now this Jason Bean cat he's all of a sudden got confidence. I was really surprised at Oklahoma's inability to stop the run. And those running backs, there's two of them at Kansas, Highshaw and Neal. And they are a 1-2 punch. So there was a multitude of things that didn't go right. And like I said, it kind of started versus UCF at home the week before. And we'll see if they can get back on track because it doesn't get any easier.
And for those that don't follow Kansas football, this was a little bit like their Tua and Jalen Hurts moment in the SEC championship, right? Because Bean, if I remember correctly, went through senior day last year, was either going to go play somewhere else or be done with football. He decided to hang around knowing he was going to be the backup. And then here he is in this big moment. It was sort of what Alabama fans experienced with Jalen Hurts that year. He was the backup to Tua.
Yeah, it's absolute vindication and validation for why sometimes if you just gut it out and deal with the hard and embrace it, some good things might come your way. And let's keep in mind, remember last year, Kansas got off to that great start, and then Jalen Daniels went down again, and he had to come in and play. And he might have looked at this and said, hey, Jalen Daniels, for as talented as he is, he has been injury prone, and I could get my shot again. I mean, Jalen Daniels came into the season, Jim, as the preseason offensive player of the year in the Big 12. It wasn't Quinn Ewers, right? It wasn't Dylan Gabriel. It was Jalen Daniels. And so credit Jason Bean for hanging around. And then when he's gotten his moment, he's made some plays. He's kept them in winning football positions. And obviously they're a problem for people to handle.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris H. jumps into the chat room early. Says if Jalen Daniels had not got hurt early this year, Kansas may be one of those surprise undefeated teams or one-loss team that would be in the playoff conversation when the first rankings come out Tuesday night. Monday Morning Live always brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag, where you can still get that deposit bonus when you jump in there. A 110% deposit bonus. They'll match that right up to $1,000 if you jump in using our promo code Next Round. Next Round is the promo code when you go to mybookie.ag. Be sure to act quick because you never know how long these deposit bonus lasts. But anytime you go on to mybookie.ag, always use the promo code Next Round to see what great offer you have there. Full slate of NFL and a whole week of college football coming up and more of the World Series. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie, mybookie.ag, the promo code Next Round. We're going to jump around the whole weekend of college football, and then as we do that, set up what is the biggest weekend of the year coming up. So what happened in Week 9 sets up what happens in Week 10. Before we get to everything else on the national stage, locally here in our market, Hugh Freeze got his first SEC win at home, and they seem to have found a little bit of rhythm offensively. Hugh went into the game and said, hey, we're going to let Peyton Thorne sort of have this game. He doesn't have to look over his shoulder, and it paid dividends. Even on the first drive, they looked different.
Yeah, he was very efficient. And then they were able to run the ball at the running back position, too. I think that's another thing that's been lacking is they've gotten the bulk of their runs from quarterback run because they really haven't had any semblance of order in the passing game. This time they were able to be complementary to one another, allow the running backs to eat a little bit, and then he just did enough, right? He didn't make mistakes. And I'll say this, Jim, like I said this on Sunday on Sirius XM. Outside of Alabama remaining on their schedule, I could legitimately see Auburn finishing 7-5. And when you consider that offense in its entirety throughout the entire season, that would be one of the better coaching jobs in the league. When you look at what that was inherited, now listen, they can play on defense now, but offensively, what they've been having to work around each and every week, and we've gotten to this point, week 8, week 9, where we finally see what looks like some consistency on offense, and enough to where you say, all right, you look at these games down the stretch, they could legitimately win 7 games, and you scratch your head going, how did they pull that off? It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I sit here today, after what I saw at the cocktail party with Georgia and Florida, I think Auburn's played Georgia better than anybody in the country so far. Yeah. Is that right?
They absolutely have. And I'll tell you, it was because of the defense, right? It was because of the defense. And then I think they just outlasted Auburn because they're superior, so vastly superior to all teams. But on that day. And again, you're playing at home. It's such a difficult place to play. Can't say enough about that. But you're right. As far as the game plan that they had going in, forcing Auburn on that day to really have to contend with quarterback run. And then defensively, they made a bunch of plays. And remember, that was the game where Brock Bowers was covered, but he wasn't really covered.
That's right. And Auburn had an injury. I think it was Jalen Simpson who went down late, and he had shut Bowers down for most of the day, or limited him. And when he went to the sidelines injured, that's when Bowers started to eat. Speaking of Bowers, no Brock Bowers for Georgia, but no problem against Florida in the cocktail party. I'm telling you what, boy, this Carson Beck kid continues to churn out good game after good game, no turnovers, never seems to put his team in harm's way. You can say all you want to about quarterback manager this. He makes some tough throws, and they did a better job without Bowers, I thought, spreading that football around and letting more people eat a little bit, and Ladd McConkey was one of those guys that benefited from that.
It started versus Kentucky. That's when I felt it started with Carson Beck, because in that game, he showed the ability to work through progressions and find other people. And they didn't have Ladd McConkey then, but they had Rosemary Jack-Saint, they had Ra Thomas. He targeted them. They made plays for him. All of a sudden, confidence is up. And so obviously the sky's not falling in Athens, Georgia without Brock Bowers. They've got other guys that have taken upon themselves to step up. And here we are at this point of the season. And we're seeing these new quarterbacks that everybody was wondering about. I was wondering about all of them: Kyle McCord, Beck, Jalen Milroe, a wealth of quarterbacks across the country. And you're saying, okay, well, who's going to be that guy that figures it out and emerges? And right now, it's Carson Beck. And I agree with you, Jim. Like, he's made some very difficult intermediate and deep level throws look fairly routine. And once he starts playing some more and continues to gain confidence, and they can continue to add more in the run game, he's gonna be a problem. Like, I could see him emerging and eventually becoming exactly what they had with Stetson Bennett towards the end of Stetson Bennett's career.
Billy Napier did something in that game that bothers me. I guess it bothers me when it doesn't work. It's fourth and inches. And listen, I'm okay going for it because you got to take some chances if you're going to knock off number one, two-time defending national champs. But it's a 10-7 game, fourth and inches, and instead of just lining it up and doing the tush push or whatever, or just running a play with ETN, they do a little gadget play, and it doesn't work. And from that point on, it was all Georgia. I think it quickly went 17-7, 24-7. It led. It was the game right at that point. And he decided we can't get an inch or a few inches, less than a foot, by just lining it up. We had to do some kind of gadget play, and that was the game right there for me.
Yeah, and I think in those situations, when you're playing somebody like Georgia, that's when you get into your 12 personnel or your 13 personnel, and you direct snap it to the running back and you outnumber them in the box. And you say, okay, we might not be ideal at the point of attack with our five linemen, but we're going to outnumber you with the tight ends, and we're going to overload one side. You got to get a couple of inches. I feel like if you're not going to do the push, that's generally your best option if you're not better than the opponent. If you're just flat out better, you line up, you run inside zone or what have you, and you just know that you're going to win up front. But I don't think Florida's felt that way against Georgia, certainly not in the last few years. But I can totally see what you're getting at. And I would, furthermore, because Gus Malzahn did this on the 2-point conversion play against Oklahoma 2 weeks. And it was like, man, you don't have one better than that. I mean, you got down there, you scored, you're in position. There just had to be a better choice. And again, we're all Monday morning quarterbacks and second guessing. But I think the other thing that I have a bit of a pet peeve about sometimes too is when it is fourth and inches, third and inches, and we're snapping it 5 yards back into the shotgun. Let's line up, get under center, and let's just try to see if we can get those few inches.
Okay, Kirby gave Dan Mullen a little bit of a haircut afterwards. We'll talk about some of the coaches who are not afraid to fire back. After I tell you about our friends at Manscaped, if you need to be well groomed and get a haircut, Manscaped can take care of you head to toe. All you have to do is go to manscaped.com. Manscaped.com. Use our promo code Monday20. Monday20 gets you 20% off your purchase right there. 20% off. The holidays are coming up. Unbelievable gift for the man in your life, or maybe a friend, or maybe you want to give it to yourself. Either way, maybe you want to just slip a note to the wife and say, hey, this is what I want this year. Let Santa know this is what I want under the tree. Manscaped.com, manscaped.com, promo code Monday20, get you 20% off right there at manscaped.com. So afterwards, I mean, I didn't know these coaches listened or watched, listened to Sports Talk Radio or watched the pregame shows or any of that. Here's Kirby Smart afterwards. He was talking, man. I don't have the sound for you here, but I see him in the postgame. He's sitting there chatting. Hey, I thought we were friends. He said we were going to lose the game. I saw where he said we're going to lose the game, and then he throws in the little Dan Mullen shot. He didn't really like to recruit. So, what do you think of these coaches this weekend? Dave Dorn did it to Steve Smith. We're not a basketball school. He can kiss the backside of my wolf pack, and Narduzzi's there throwing his players under the bus on Twitter.
Ooh.
I mean, let's start with Kirby. A fair game, I guess. It seemed like it was all in fun with his old rival Dan Mullen.
Well, the problem is on our end of things, which is now the world Dan Mullen is living in, is you have to take a side. You're going to be asked to make a pick, all right? Hopefully you have some validation behind why you're making that pick, and you're going to be right some of the time, and you're going to be wrong some of the time. That's just the nature of the business. It is what it is. What I laugh about is all of these coaches continually talk about how they don't pay attention to the noise and they don't pay attention to what's being said about them. They're so full of it. They're getting every ounce of it. If somebody says something, that SID comes to that coach and goes, hey, did you hear about this? And then now they know about it, or another coach texts them, or somebody texts them, or they're just looking on the internet and seeing what people are saying about them. They're all to some degree doing it, right? But the jab that I just think it's hilarious because Kirby prides himself, and well, he should, on their evaluation process and their work ethic in recruiting. And it has clearly paid off. It has clearly been evident on the field. And then he makes the jab about Dan at Florida. What's interesting to me, though, is like you kind of look at Dan Mullen and you're going, well, he had to have done a hell of a job recruiting at Mississippi State.
That's right.
I mean, a hell of a job. So the first thing that came to my mind when I heard that, as I chuckled, but it was clearly a jab, not just a damn it. It was a jab at the rivalry between Georgia and Florida because they've clearly outclassed Florida as of late in terms of overall talent profile on the roster.
We'll talk Missouri and Georgia with LSU and Alabama and all the other big games coming up near the end of Monday Morning Live, which is always brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. mybookie.ag. But back to the games from this weekend. We've talked about the Big 12 in Oklahoma going down, Texas surviving BYU, Auburn getting their first SEC win with Hugh Freeze. We've talked about the cocktail party. But maybe the most impressive team in the country this weekend was the Oregon Ducks and what they did in Rice-Eccles. Utah had won 18 straight, 27 of 28. Bo Nix goes in with Oregon, and he completes 14 of his first 15 passes. And just like that, it's Oregon 21, Utah 3. And that was never a contest.
Right.
Dan Lanning's team, you could say, other than Georgia, you can say maybe other than Michigan, you can say maybe other than Florida State. Oregon's playing really good football, though. They may not be playing the best in the country, but they're in the conversation as the best team in the country.
Despite the loss to Washington, I couldn't agree with you more. I think they're a top 3 team right now. They might be a top 2 team in terms of just sheer performance. The 2 road games, you go to the Husky Stadium and narrowly lose, then you go into Rice-Eccles, and nobody does that there, as I mentioned. That's 2 hardcore road games right there.
That's right.
So I thought the level of efficiency of Bo Nix, because here's the thing with Utah, especially without Cam Rising, they cannot afford to get into a track meet style team with anybody that's good on defense. For example, a week prior, they could survive because they're playing SC on defense. That wasn't going to happen with Oregon getting up because Oregon's got guys on defense and it has some semblance of order on that side of the ball. But they took the crowd out of it. They put so much pressure on an offense that prides itself in grinding you down, maintaining possession of the ball, shortening the game by not letting you have the ball on offense. And it took their entire mode of operation and threw a grenade on it. So I thought it was the most impressive performance of the entire weekend. I think it sent a message. And listen, that conference now, with Arizona beating Oregon State late on Saturday night, SC so fortunate to win. Colorado goes down again. You still got Washington. You still got Oregon, as we referenced. And here's the interesting thing. I posed this question to Barrett Salee yesterday. More likely to lose out, Colorado or USC?
I would.
You can use this on your 4 downs this week.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. USC this weekend with Washington. They still have UCLA. They still have
and
Oregon. Colorado seems like they had one game I thought they could win. Still.
Well, it looked like at the beginning of the season they could. It was Arizona.
Right.
And at the beginning of the season till now, the other one was Washington State. When Washington State's kind of falling apart, but Colorado's got to play that game in Pullman.
Right. Well,
the quarterback might be on a stretcher.
Yeah, I mean, Shadur Sanders, watching that game the other night, 7 sacks, 17 hits, kept getting up. Deion says afterwards that he took a injection at halftime to manage the pain he was dealing with so much. You could see him limping around out there. Yeah, that's a tough question. I feel like USC will get somebody. I feel like they'll beat somebody. But, boy, it shouldn't have been Cal this past weekend. Cal, if I got this right, Cal, loses. They go for 2. I love that at the end. Why not try to walk it off there? USC beats Cal 50-49. Cal's playing their 3rd-string quarterback and their 5th-string running back. 3rd-string quarterback, their 5th-string running back. They had 4 turnovers and still had 7 touchdown drives in that game and a chance to beat USC. Hard to believe USC is 7-2. They keep escaping these monumental upsets.
No, we always hear, that's the best 6-2 or 7, or that's the best 2-loss team in the country. This is the worst 2-loss team in the country. I don't know if it's even close.
Yeah. And Caleb Williams, he continues to play good football. But my goodness, that defense against that Cal team, who, Auburn saw them earlier this year out in Berkeley and shut them down, and that's where USC was playing, 50-49. Fortunate for USC to survive that one. And what is crazy times out in the Pac-12. But since Washington beat Oregon, and they have struggled. Oregon took that loss and has gotten better each week. Washington seems to have gotten worse. Washington survives a Stanford team that I think still has 2 wins. And I think it was 35-33, and they run a gadget play. The guy's wide open, and he drops the pass. It was a little low, but he drops the pass. And a late touchdown there, and Washington comfortably wins that game. But it was scary for a moment against Stanford. Oregon seems like a playoff team to me. Washington does not right now. And yet Washington is the unbeaten team. Do you think Washington can survive and make it to the Pac-12 championship game? They go to L.A. this weekend to play USC.
Yeah, listen, I think they can, but not if they continue to play with fire like they have the last couple of weeks. They went from making everything look so effortless to things actually looking difficult, it not being easy. And I don't know what's created that, why that's occurred. But if I'm the committee and the committee's looking, I'm on that committee and they're looking at, not only are you looking at who you've played, who you've beat, who you've lost to, but they really take a really hard look at how are you playing right now. And they've done it before. They have ranked. They did this with Michigan and Michigan State, I think, in 2017. Where they felt like at the time of the ranking, even though Michigan State had beaten Michigan, that Michigan was playing better. It might have been the other way around. I would not be surprised one bit if in the initial rankings, whether it's at the top 4, I wouldn't be surprised one bit if they have Oregon above Washington.
Really?
Would not surprise me one bit.
Wow.
If they're paying, really close attention to how a team is playing right now. To have that Utah game occur right before the initial rankings is a big deal.
Yeah.
Because, it's going to be fresh in the minds of that committee. That was an eye-opener, I think, to everybody.
Okay.
I mean, to everybody that watched that game.
Well, in the commercial break, I want you to, in your head, formulate your top 6 and do it like the college football playoffs. Pair up 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and give me the top 2 just sitting on the outside, because we get to see what the college football playoff committee is thinking coming up Tuesday night as we get our first unveiling as on Halloween night, so as it turns out, of what the college football playoff committee's initial thoughts are on what we've seen this college football season. Let me tell you about my friends at Way to Wellness, and then I got a couple of questions in the chat room before we take our first break. Way to Wellness is a very simple plan, Leslie and her board-certified team, that can help you with your weight loss. Took me from 216 down to 184. But more importantly, it sort of corrected some bad blood pressure numbers and cholesterol numbers for me. They can help you with that. As we get older, we all start to struggle with certain things. Blood pressure and cholesterol can be 2 of those things. Your diet can really impact those, and that's where Way to Wellness comes in. Go to this website. It's a planforme.com, a planforme.com. That takes you right to the Way to Wellness website. You'll find out there's no cookie-cutter plan. Every plan's designed for you. There's no contract. There's no sign-up fee, and your first consultation, because you're a Monday Morning Live and Next Round viewer and listener, is absolutely free. So nothing out of pocket while you go learn about everything they offer at Way to Wellness. It's all right there. The website again, aplanforme.com, aplanforme.com. It's your journey to healthy living. Ty writes in, he wants to know, where is Ole Miss right now in your mind when it comes to potentially the college football playoffs? How far, where does Ole Miss stack up for you when these first rankings come out? Let me check here. They're 7-1 on the year. Their only loss on the road to Alabama.
Well, and they beat LSU. That's the big deal, because if LSU and Alabama coming up, there won't be a bigger LSU fan than the Ole Miss faithful. And I think they're playing their best football right now. But I also think they've gotten themselves in a position where all their right players are healthy, right? If you looked at them early on in the season, they were not the same without Trey Harris. They were not the same when they couldn't get Quinshon Judkins fully healthy and get him entrenched in the offensive scheme. I put them right in the thick of it. I really do. Like I depending on what happens with Alabama and LSU. Now, what they can't do is fall off a cliff like they did a year ago.
Right.
But I think this team has improved on defense. I think they know that we're not going to be exceptional on that side of the ball, but we do have to be competent, competitive, and know that our offense is an offense that can score with anybody. So we can get in a track meet and win, but defensively, if we just get off the field a couple of times a game, we've got some advantages because of the offensive firepower. I like them. I think they're a team that is right in the thick of it and in the thick of it to get to Atlanta.
Jerry writes in, is the chaos over yet in the Big 12? Any chance we see Big 12 championship with neither Oklahoma or Texas in it? I think there's a huge tie near the top, including Iowa State, who only has 1 conference loss right now, which is, I think, a scheduling fluke to this point, but still.
Well, you consider all of the things that were going on at that program for Matt Campbell entering into training camp. And now he's got this team at 5-3, and guess who has to come to Ames in 2 weeks?
Who?
Texas. The Texas Longhorns. And that's the game they're aiming to get Quinn Ewers back in. Weird things happen in Ames. So to simply answer the question, I don't think chaos is over in college football, let alone the Big 12. This is the time of year where you're down the stretch, you're tired, you're worn out. When or if you've had your bye yet, do you have a significant injury? And if you do, can you survive that? Because it's been very, very clear to this point that if you don't bring your A game and you're on the wrong day against the wrong opponent, you're going down.
Yep, absolutely. MyBookie.ag, promo code next round. They bring you Monday Morning Live with ESPN's Tom Luganbill. When we come back, more of your questions in the chat room. We'll set the table for LSU, Alabama, and a lot of other big games still to come, and still recap what went on in the Big Ten, the ACC, and more SEC play when we come back right here on Monday Morning Live, presented by MyBookie.ag, promo code next round.
The Next Round Golf Cart is here. Your chance to play 4 area golf courses for just $89. Get 18 holes of golf and cart at Limestone Springs, Cross Creek, The Meadows, and the newly renovated Woodward Golf Club. That's a value of $247 for just $89. Or get the Next Round Deluxe Golf Cart for just $119. It gets you all 4 courses with cart, plus an exclusive Next Round Golf t-shirt, koozie, golf tees, and a sticker. There are no restrictions. The cart is good through September 2024. Get your golf cart now at nextround.store.
Man, I love a good meal. I'm Jim Dunaway. A good meal is what you get with my friend Sterling at Champy's Chicken on Highway 119 in Alabaster. We're talking great southern fried chicken, wonderful sides, hand-cut chicken fingers, po' boys, and those Mississippi Delta recipe tamales. You got a perfect menu for everybody. Champy's Chicken is perfect for watching the big game, or taking a meal to the lake house, down to the coast, or stay in the restaurant and dine in a great atmosphere. It's all made fresh to order right there on 119 in Alabaster, Champy's Chicken. The wait is over. Tonali has arrived. Beautifully distinctive Italian styling and performance. Come test drive the all-new 2024 Alfa Romeo Tonali plug-in hybrid at Alfa Romeo of Birmingham. The all-new Tonali offers best-in-class horsepower and torque, fastest 0 to 60 times in its class, plus best-in-class range with full electric charge. And best of all, qualified Tonali leasees are eligible for up to $7,500 EV tax credit factored into your lease. Hurry down to Alfa Romeo of Birmingham and experience the all-new Tonali.
Hey, there's nothing worse than waking up to a plumbing problem. Don't get caught in a flooded house. Call the guys at Hemp Hill Services. Adam, Chad, and the team at Hemp Hill are the only ones I trust to fix it and fix it right the first time. Hemp Hill Services does it right and always at a fair price. For all of your plumbing, cooling, and heating needs, trust the name that Birmingham has trusted since 1954. That is Hemp Hill Services. Call now, 205-229-2090. That's 205-229-2090.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live will share the latest interviews and videos from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and campuses all over the college landscape. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Live daily show. Jim, Lance, and Ryan will share their thoughts, and remember, you can always see the old shows on the Next Round Live YouTube channel. Subscribe, like, and don't forget to comment. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. It's Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Do you need extra cash handy? Look no further than Legacy Credit Union for whatever loan your lifestyle requires. It only takes a few minutes to apply and request the amount you need to give you peace of mind. With affordable low rates and manageable payback plans, a Legacy Lifestyle loan is crafted just for you. Apply online today at legacycreditunion.com/join. Lifestyle loans from Legacy. Terms and conditions may apply. Legacy is federally insured by the NCUA.
Make sure to start your day at nextroundlive.com. Get caught up on the latest podcasts and videos from the live daily show, plus specialty shows such as the Mystery Fifth Hour. You can also learn more about the whole staff at Double Down Media, find all of our social media feeds, see the latest videos from our YouTube channel and gaming channel, plus find other ways to consume the show like the Next Round mobile app, which you can download direct from the site via your iOS and Android device. Make nextroundlive.com your homepage and stay up to date with everything from us here at the Next Round.
Monday Morning Live, presented by MyBookie.ag, MyBookie.ag, and by our friends at Blakely's Bouquets. Order online at Blakely'sBouquets.com, Blakely'sBouquets.com. All the great arrangements you need as the fall weather rolls in, starting tomorrow here, where the high temperature is barely going to make 60. And so Thanksgiving's just around the corner. All the holidays, you get the flowers, the bouquets, and all the table sittings and stuff for your mantles right at Blakely'sBouquets.com, Blakely'sBouquets.com, or over the phone, 205-579-4900, 579-4900, or in person at the flower shop right in Oxmoor, on Oxmoor Road, right there in downtown Homewood. There's only one. It's Blakely's Bouquets, Blakely'sBouquets.com. Luganville not only has Bedlam on Saturday, he's got the Battle for the Belt on Thursday night.
Yeah.
South Alabama and Troy. Good football game there. South Alabama got surprised by Louisiana, but Troy playing really good football right now.
Listen, both of those coaches have done such a good job. And listen, Troy, based off of what the NCAA may or may not do with James Madison, if they did the right thing, they'd allow James Madison to play. Troy could find themselves in the thick of it, right? They need Tulane to have a stumble. They need Air Force to have a stumble. But that was a huge win against a pretty good opponent in Texas State this past week. And that quarterback, Troy Gunnar Watson, he's a player. So, yeah, it should be a good one on ESPN2 on Thursday night. And then I got Bedlam on Saturday. Then the following Tuesday, I'm somewhere in the MAC. I don't know where I'm at. So 3 games in about 5-6 days.
But 2 good rivalry games this week for you as Luke gets ready to hit the road. Tesla Talk says Ole Miss ain't beating Georgia, so you can forget about the college football playoff discussion. But with Ole Miss, they got Texas A&M this weekend at home. Georgia's still on the schedule down the road. And potentially, maybe if the things worked out right in an SEC championship game, there is a path to where they could get into the playoff discussion. So you at least would want to have that path out there. Could Ole Miss challenge Georgia? Who is Georgia's toughest game remaining, do you think?
Well, as far as, having to deal with an offense, it's this week against Missouri, and it would be Ole Miss. And the question that was asked of us in the last segment is, are they in the mix? Yeah, they're in the mix. They've earned the right to be in the mix. And the thing, I keep pointing to that LSU game because right now LSU is a problem. And they've kind of quietly improved a little bit on defense while all the while got a quarterback that should be in the Heisman Trophy discussion in Jaden Daniels. He's carried that football team through a lot of ups and downs on defense for them. So, for Georgia, it would be Missouri and Brady Cook. And then, I think, listen, as an overall team, is Georgia going to be better than every team they face when they take the field? Yes. But I do think, in fairness to Georgia, the schedule has gotten more difficult. I don't know if anybody would have been overly convinced that at this point of the season, you would have seen as many ranked teams, including Florida last week, okay, as many ranked teams that would have been on Georgia's schedule at this point.
That's right. Missouri, whose only loss is to LSU, a game they should have won, is at 14. Yep. They get Georgia this weekend in Athens. Georgia's number 1 in the AP poll. Missouri is 14. Ole Miss is there. They're 11. Tennessee is there. They're 19. That is still left. And Georgia Tech just beat nationally ranked North Carolina this past week. I saw this about it's Brent Key that's over there, right? I saw this, and it can't be true. I have yet to have a chance to go check this out. But he's 4-0 versus ranked ACC teams and something like 4-4 versus unranked ACC teams, something like that. I'll see if I can find the stat here real quickly. But it cannot be true that that's the case. I got it right here. Okay, here
it sounds about right.
Yeah, Georgia Tech. Brent Key is 4-0 against ranked ACC teams, 3-5 versus unranked ACC teams. That cannot be right. I've got to verify that, but I think I read that somewhere yesterday.
Well, Miami this year, North Carolina this year, North Carolina last year. That's 3. So there's one more out there. They were all ranked, right? And so it would have been, I think it would have been Pitt last year, right?
Probably so.
It would have been Pitt last year.
Yeah.
So there's 4 right there. I will say this, though, man. What that program was the last, 3 to 4 years and what he's done in a short period of time, that guy's done a really, really good job. And remember, they got throttled at home by Bowling Green and somehow have recovered from that and find themselves in the spot they're in right now.
I thought Gene Chizik had fixed that North Carolina defense, but it is USC East this weekend. 246 rushing yards in the fourth quarter.
I know.
348 rushing yards in the game for Georgia Tech. And they made a play at the end. Tez Walker is released from the hospital. It was a big hit, causing a fumble to secure that victory. But Georgia Tech at home. And the ACC, it's down to Florida State if they're going to be a playoff team this year because NC State beats Clemson. Let's talk Clemson first, and we'll come back to North Carolina and do Florida State. Clemson is now 4-4, and this is a telling sign here for Dabo. In their last 12 Power 5 games, they've lost 7 of those. So in a course of a season of Power 5, they're 5-7 in their last 12 Power 5 games. Where is Clemson right now? Is it a quarterback problem? Is it a receiver problem? Is it a philosophy problem? Where are you on Dabo and Clemson right now today after another loss to NC State?
I think to some degree it is a quarterback problem. They had started off on such a run during his tenure there. going back to Taj Boyd, then Deshaun Watson, then Trevor Lawrence, when you're not playing with a first rounder at quarterback, things get really tough and you become very human very quickly. And that's one thing that sticks out. But I think the most important thing that sticks out is throughout Dabo's entire career there as the head coach at Clemson, when you watch Clemson and you watch this program develop and build, they've never been a program that beats themselves. Now that's all they do. They are turnover prone, penalty prone, they're undisciplined. They are nowhere near as talented in the offensive line and at receiver as they've been in years past. But that being said, they still self-destruct. I mean, when you look at the Florida State game, Florida State had no business winning that game. Clemson outplayed Florida State, and there have now been 2 plays for Clemson this year where on each individual play, the quarterback made a boneheaded move. The 3rd and 1 against Florida State, where all he had to do is hand to Will Shipley. He pulls it and throws the quick screen out to the boundary. They tackle it for a 1-yard loss. Now it's 4th down. Guess what? You missed the field goal. All right? That's on the quarterback. Against Miami, all he's got to do is hand the ball off. It was not an RPO. What does he do for some reason? He doesn't. He pulls it, and he's going to do his own thing. That's 2 plays right there just on the quarterback. Again, undisciplined, poor decision-making, and that's kind of become what this team is. If you go back to the opening game of the season against Duke, Duke's been a really good football team. They've been a great story for 2 years now, but Clemson absolutely blew that game because they were screwing around the whole time. And that's the thing I think has been most glaring to me, Jim, is we have not seen that from Clemson. And now I feel like that's what we see every week.
Florida State they've got that big win over LSU, which will help them with the selection show when the playoffs are unveiled tomorrow night. Their remaining schedule at Pitt, and who knows how many players will dress after what he tweeted this past weekend, what that locker room is going to be like for Pat Narduzzi. Home to Miami, home to North Alabama, on the road to Florida, and then an ACC championship game against maybe Louisville or someone else. Florida State looks about like the biggest lock possible in the college football playoffs right now.
I know, but that's the problem because 4 downs last week, Oklahoma, Kansas.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there are going to be games that are going to come up, and if Florida State catches a team on the wrong day, look out. I think that's part of the problem here is having this discussion by forecasting what's happened in the ACC and what those teams now look like could be problematic psychologically for Florida State because now everybody's going to be telling you how easy it is, right? And that's when bad things tend to happen. Now, Mike Norvell's done a remarkable job of keeping this team on the straight and narrow, keeping their head out of the clouds, showing up each weekend. They could have easily gone on the road to Wake Forest and dilly-dallied around, and they didn't do that. They didn't play down to the level of competition. That's encouraging if you're a Florida State fan. But, yeah, that's what scares me, is I don't think the chaos is over. Not saying it's going to happen to Florida State, but everybody pointing at their schedule the rest of the way, I wouldn't like hearing that all the time.
Yeah, but I'd like their position. If I had to choose anybody's position in college football, I'd like to be in Florida State's position because it does feel like even if they lost one, that win over LSU, depending on what happens in Tuscaloosa this week, could be a nice little ace in the hole for the Seminoles there. Jordan Travis is playing really good. He may be a Heisman finalist when it's all said and done. 359, 3 touchdowns. Again, this past weekend, Keon Coleman with a couple of more touchdown receptions for Florida State there. Okay, gutter cap, and then you tell me your playoff rankings right now. I asked you to think about that. Gutter cap brings you that patented aluminum cover system that fits over most existing gutters to keep out debris and eliminate gutter cleaning. It's backed up by a lifetime warranty with our man C. Stu. He's been doing this locally in Birmingham for over 2 decades. You don't stay in business with a great reputation like C. Stu without doing it right. He gives you 45% off the retail price right now if you go to guttercapbirmingham.com, guttercapbirmingham.com, or you can call him up, 205-823-2212, 205-823-2212. Stay off that dangerous ladder forever with our friends at GutterCap, guttercapbirmingham.com. Let me hear your rankings right now. 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3. Who is it?
So my 1 versus 4 would be Georgia versus Washington. And my 2 versus 3 would be Ohio State versus Florida State.
And you're leaving Michigan out?
Oh, did I just not? Oh, excuse me. What am I saying? Michigan versus Florida State. My 1 versus 4 would be, my 1 versus 4 would be Georgia versus Ohio State.
Okay.
Excuse me. Sorry, I got distracted there on my wins and losses.
No, that's okay. It's okay. Washington, Washington is the problem because when I said and do mine, when I look at mine too, I reluctantly put Washington unbeaten in my top 6 because I just don't think they're one of the 6 best teams, and that becomes a problem because I think Texas is better than Oklahoma, but yet Oklahoma beat Texas.
I do too, actually.
I think Oregon is better than Washington, but Washington beat Oregon. So conventional thinking would say, Jim, we play the games for a reason. You're an idiot for thinking that. But as I look at those 2 teams, I would bet, digits off of my hand that Texas would beat Oklahoma a second time and that Oregon would beat Washington the second time. But we got to count those games for something, though, right? I mean, they count.
Well, they do count, but that's also why, there are going to be people that will have Washington in their top 4 because they're undefeated. And the committee may do that too. 5 and 6 is I think far more debatable now than what 1 through 4 would be, regardless of what order that you have them in. And a lot of people say, well, Michigan should be number 1 over Georgia. Well, my eyes tell me Michigan's really good. They average fewer than 3 penalties a game. They don't turn the ball over, and they have a lot of championship level of ingredients. And the best team they've played this year is Rutgers.
Yep.
All right. And so that's problematic for me. So, I would have them. I'd have Georgia at 1. I'd have Michigan at 2. And then I'd have Florida State probably at 3 and Ohio State at 4. And then again, the 5 and 6, that's the dilemma. You're right. Texas, Oklahoma, Washington, Oregon. And then the other team that's kind of a dilemma for me. And you'd say, well, why? And it's because they're so talented on defense. And given which quarter you decide to play, I still think Alabama could be a problem for all of those teams in the top 5 or 6.
Yeah, Alabama's not out of it yet either. Big game with LSU this weekend. I got Georgia, Florida State 1-4, Michigan, Ohio State 2-3, Washington and Oregon 5-6, and Washington to me it sticks out like a sore thumb. And I don't trust Ohio State either. We'll get to the games this weekend, but Ohio State survives Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And Penn State was scared by Indiana in the Big Ten. Kyle McCord, a couple of interceptions. Listen, thank God they got a healthy TreVeyon Henderson this weekend. They gave him the ball
different.
24 times for 162 yards. Marvin Harrison did Marvin Harrison things, but without TreVeyon Henderson, they lose that football game to an average Wisconsin.
Yeah, but it's a tough place to play, especially at night. And you got to give Ohio State some credit there. TreVeyon Henderson makes them different. And, a lot of people quietly would not have realized that despite the 2 turnovers from Kyle McCord, he entered that game 12 touchdown passes to 1 interception. Like he had been playing good, efficient football. And your assumption is that, they've been below average there. Well, maybe they've been a bit inconsistent offensively. But remember, they've had injuries to Mayan Williams, TreVeyon Henderson, Emeka Ibuka. If they don't have number 18, they could have been in trouble against a few teams, right? I mean, that was the difference between really Penn State and Ohio State for the most part, and then again on the road against Wisconsin. The reason why I think, in fairness to Ohio State, you have to give them some credence is because they do have 2 top 10 wins.
That's right.
Right? And say what you want, but that's got to matter, especially with that 4-game gauntlet that Notre Dame went through. That was a heartbreaker for them at home. And then again, they had to go play at Duke, then they had to go play at Louisville, and then they had to play USC. So you got to give Ohio State some credit in that regard.
Yeah, and I would tell you with Ohio State, their defense is holding up 4 times this year. They have won games when they've scored 24 or less points, and that's hard to do. So Ohio State's defense and Alabama's defense.
Do you have them at 4? You have them at 4?
I had them at 3. I had Florida State at 4 because of the wins, because of those quality wins that they have there. But I don't trust them. I think Michigan will cruise when it's all said and done. Michigan will cruise to the Big Ten championship. We haven't seen that from Michigan yet because of their schedule, but I think they're that good. All right, we will set the table for the weekend coming up. That includes Steve's question here. If Alabama beats LSU, are they a lock for Atlanta? A lock is the tricky word there. I wouldn't say a lock, but at Kentucky, at Auburn still are tricky games. I know Kentucky lost to Tennessee 33-27 this past weekend, but that's still a dangerous game for Alabama with what they can present offensively at times.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, let's just say they do get past LSU. They're going to be the better team in the remaining two games. And then it's going to come down to what have we talked about all year long about Alabama? Will they be heavily penalized? Will they play one quarter lights out and play another quarter like they're not even at the game? And I'm talking about offensively. Defensively, they're as good as anybody in college football.
Yeah. So LSU Alabama this weekend. There a few weeks ago, until they scored 27 in the second half, I didn't know if Alabama could score enough points to keep up with LSU. I still don't know if they can, but give me a quick look ahead to LSU Alabama coming up Saturday night, 6:45 over at Bryant-Denny.
I think it's fairly simple in my mind. This game cannot turn into a track meet. That does not favor Alabama. That does not favor who they are on offense right now. Doesn't mean they wouldn't be able to compete. But if that's the way the thing starts off and it starts off fast, that's a bad recipe for Alabama. Now, this being said, this is going to be a defense unlike any other that LSU has faced. I don't think there are going to be as many guys just running wide open. I do believe that the focal point will be on forcing Jaden Daniels. If you're going to let Jaden Daniels beat you, you can't allow it to be on improvised plays or designated run plays. They know they've got to stop the quarterback's legs in this game. You just have to, because part of what's made LSU so dangerous is, yes, they've been very proficient in the passing game, but that guy has made so many plays when things haven't been perfect, when things have broken down, or they just simply call a quarterback draw, quarterback lead, quarterback counter, and now you've got to have an extra body in the box to deal with them. That's the whole thing for me. Defend quarterback run. Don't allow them to get out in front of you 14-3 or 17-3, because now the game's in LSU's favor.
Yeah, that should be a good game. Another big one in the SEC is Missouri and Georgia this week. Georgia's two closest games, 10-point win over South Carolina, 7-point win over Auburn. At home this weekend to Missouri. Missouri coming off of a bye week. Can Missouri play with Georgia this week?
Yeah, they can compete with them because I think they're for real. And when I say for real, are they going to be the better team on the field? No, they're not going to have the same athletes. But here's the thing. Georgia has circled this one for a calendar year. If you remember how this game went in Columbia last year, Georgia remembers that, and they know that feeling and how scary that was, because it could have all been over. And this is a much better version of a Missouri team than that team was a year ago, and now you get them at home. I think Brady Cook has been phenomenal. 15 touchdowns, just 3 turnovers through the air. They've just been so efficient with the ball. They don't take risks with the football. They've got an 800-yard rusher, almost a 250-yard rusher, another guy with over 100 yards, and they might have the most dangerous offensive weapon in the entire league, and that's Luther Burden. So we've talked about Georgia becoming really good under Carson Beck's leadership because of the moves he's making in the maturity of the passing game. But this is going to be maybe one of the more difficult passing games to this point, until Georgia plays Ole Miss, that the Bulldogs will have faced all season long, because this Missouri team is creative. They can score. They're really good with the yards after the catch, and they've created explosive plays in the vertical passing game.
Ed says Missouri's playing some solid football, but because it's in Athens, still go Bulldogs for him. He thinks they win this one. Stuart Mandel of the Athletic made an interesting point. When Georgia is challenged and is awake and engaged in the middle of this 25-game win streak, everyone thought Kentucky may beat them. They beat Kentucky by 38. Maybe Florida, since Brock Bowers is hurt, they beat Florida by 23. Oh, here comes bad South Carolina. They only win by 10. Oh, poor old Auburn. They only win by 7. So here comes nationally ranked Missouri with national TV and the possibility of a ranked loss. Look for a 30-point Georgia win if they hold steady here. Elsewhere, you were there last week in Austin. So they're not expecting Quinn Ewers to play this week, and here comes Kansas State, who is cruising. How tough of a game is this for Sark?
I think it's distinctly tough. First of all, not just one, but both of the quarterbacks for Kansas State, including the true freshman Avery Johnson, who is going to be an absolute dude. In fact, Chris Kleiman, in pregame warm-up at the Sugar Bowl last year, because we had just had Avery Johnson in the Under Armour game, and so we're just talking and chatting about him. And remember, Will Howard was coming off of a season in the Big 12 last year where he played lights out. And Chris Kleiman says to me, he goes, you know what? I think the Avery Johnson kid's going to come in and push him. And you're saying that about a guy that had just won you the Big 12 championship, and you're in the Sugar Bowl. And sure enough, look what's happened. Kansas State is dangerous. The two-quarterback system is rolling. Ever since the loss to Oklahoma State on the road, they have really found their stride. And as I said in our first half hour, Jim, from what I saw this past weekend, I think Malik Murphy will make too many mistakes. He's going to have to play so good, in my opinion, for Texas to win that game. I may be way off base. I love Texas in the run game. Their weapons are outstanding. Defensively, they're really, really good. But there is a vast and stark difference, in my opinion, between Quinn Ewers and Malik Murphy.
MyBookie.ag, bringing you Monday Morning Live for about 60 more seconds here. Royal Payne says, what if Lance Leipold had Texas A&M's NIL money? Scary thought there. Give me a 15-second thought on Lance Leipold, the big win for Kansas, and is he still in Lawrence next year?
So I had the good fortune of getting to know him when he was at Wisconsin Whitewater. In my early days at ESPN, I used to broadcast the Stag Bowl. So it was like they're in it every single year. And it did not take long through a 15-minute conversation to go, this guy's big time. Big time. I think he's one of the best coaches in the country. I'd put him in the top 5 to 8 best coaches in the country right now. He could have his pick of whatever job he wants. I know Michigan State's out there. He has a Midwest history. Texas A&M, if there's a change there, I just think he's unbelievable.
Yeah, really, really good coach, and a big-time opportunity coming up maybe for him in the Big Ten. Big week ahead. We'll talk about it on the next round coming up when we go live at 9 a.m. Central. Safe travels, Luke. We'll see you here in state later on. Bye, me guys.
You bet. Bye.
Want more of the Next Round? Download the app or visit nextroundlive.com for the latest podcast. The Mystery Fifth Hour, our not-for-all-ages podcast.